Hey, it's Andrew here with the AS Movies and Games podcast. I wanted to take some time to talk about the Elysium experiment that we did over at AS Movies and Games at arcticsunburn.com. You might have heard about it or seen me talk about it or make mention of it. So I just wanted to clarify and let you know exactly what went down. You can actually read all about it if you go to outsourceblogcontent.com/experiment1, the number one, and that'll bring you to a post called Content Outsourcing Experiment Number One Fiverr. So the whole idea was I don't really have a lot of time to update AS Movies and Games and provide a ton of new content. Although that has been a part of this experiment, which is why you've probably seen a lot more updates than maybe you have in quite a while, because we actually kind of went away or moved away from the project for a little bit, and now we're looking at sort of relaunching or making our presence known again, because the site was down for multiple weeks as we were moving from one web host to another. So we wanted to announce our return, and this may or may not be indicative of the content or the amount of content that we come out with in the future, but at least we wanted to let everyone know, hey, we're back, we're still around, we're online again, and it's possible that we'll create more media like I am right now. So I think we accomplished that with this experiment. But as you can maybe tell, the whole content outsourcing bit comes in where I didn't really have a lot of time to write about the movie Elysium. I had watched it and thought I might want to write a review about it. And that's when I said, hey, why don't we try a little bit of an experiment here? You know, we could pay someone on Fiverr $5 to write the article for us, put it out there, and maybe nobody would be any the wiser. And it's pretty interesting how things turned out, because I actually ended up writing the article myself. The reason for that being that the writer who provided us with the original Elysium review actually just kind of copied and pasted from another site. And so that being kind of a no-no with Google, and they don't really accept duplicate content, I don't think you necessarily be penalized in every situation, because if they were truly looking for that kind of stuff, then probably podcast show notes and things like that would be deranked because of how much duplicate stuff there tends to be, right? Like whether it's headers or calls to actions, those things tend to be pretty consistent across various posts and pages. So obviously search engines are always optimizing, and they're changing the way they approach that. So they're probably already conscious of those kinds of things, and they're always working on them. But anyway, I wasn't going to just post an article that was, and this is actually after I edited the whole thing, probably did 3 or 4 passes through it just to make sense of the whole thing. And then I still ended up rewriting the post on my own. So that's kind of how things turned out in the initial stages. But there's no way I was going to give up at that point, because I'd already teased about the experiment and was already talking about it on Twitter and various other places. So I had to get the post done on time, and that contributed to sort of my workload surrounding this experiment. So that was how the writing portion or the outsourcing portion went. It really didn't work out that great. But then it kind of dovetailed very quickly into a pretty intensive marketing experiment, because we were announcing the return of AS Movies and Games. And then all of a sudden I came up with all these ideas of sending out emails and doing some social media outreach and getting it in social bookmarking sites, and then drawing a custom illustration and then making a video out of it. So if you saw the Max da Costa drawing time lapse, well, that was one of the things we did as part of this marketing experiment. Now, all in all, did see a pretty significant increase in traffic for about 5 or 6 days, and after that it seems to have stabilized. But I think the average traffic has still been higher after than before the experiment. So all in all, it was sort of a success, I guess, in that sense. I would have liked to have seen a lot more stuff happen. I would have liked to have seen maybe a few email signups and maybe a little more attention from other bloggers or other places on the web, maybe journalists or some other people covering this whole thing, because it really wasn't a small thing for someone like me to do. And I probably should have maybe outsourced the marketing parts as opposed to the content writing parts, but that's probably another experiment for another time. So you can see the post if you go to arcticsunburn.com/Elysium. And I'd also recommend that you check out the Max DaCosta drawing time lapse, which I'll try to include in the show notes for this episode as well. So you should just be able to go to arcticsunburn.com/episode 14 when this whole thing is ready. And if you happen to be listening to this/watching this on YouTube, thank you for joining me. And that will be our update for this time around. So thank you for joining me for another podcast, and hopefully we'll come out with another episode here in the near future. See you again.